Hello and welcome to The Explainer. Today we're jumping into a truly mind-bending question, one that connects our world today with a deep, ancient past. So let's get right into it.
What if I told you that the basic ideas we use to describe our universe, things like particles, their properties, the forces that move them, even the concept of universal laws, what if they weren't dreamed up in a modern lab, but were actually laid out in a philosophical text from ancient India, something like 2,500 years ago? Well, that's the wild idea we're going to unpack today.
The text we're talking about is called the Vaisheshika Sutras. Now, it's really important to get this. This isn't a religious scripture. It's more like a foundational guide to natural philosophy. It was a serious, systematic attempt to categorize, everything that exists. The source material calls it an ontological schema, which is just a fancy way of saying it's a blueprint for reality itself.
So these sutras break down all of reality into 5 core categories. These categories explain everything from what something is to how it behaves. We're going to walk through each one: substance, quality, action, the universal, and the particular. And as you'll see, this ancient blueprint has some pretty stunning echoes in the language of modern physics.
All right, let's dive in with the first 2 concepts because they really work together as a team. They answer the most fundamental questions you can ask about literally anything. What is this thing made of? And what's it like? You could call it the what and the how of everything that exists.
So first up, we've got dravya, which means substance. This is the basic stuff of the universe. And it's not just physical things like a rock or a tree. In this system, even things like time and space were considered substances. You can probably see where this is going. In modern physics, this idea maps almost perfectly to our own fundamental building blocks: particles, quantum fields, or even the very fabric of space-time itself. Okay, but a substance isn't just a blank slate, right? It has guṇa, which means qualities. These are its built-in properties, like its color, or its size, or its weight. And here's the key idea. A quality can't just exist on its own. You can't have redness just floating in the void. You need something that is red. A quality has to belong to a substance. And this is where the parallel to physics just clicks into place. It becomes so clear. If the dravya, the substance, is an electron, then its guṇa, its qualities, are its specific mass, its negative charge, and its quantum spin. The particle is the what, and its properties are the how. And you simply cannot have one without the other. But wait, it gets even crazier. The Vaisheshika school argued that all physical matter was ultimately made of these tiny, eternal, indivisible atoms that they called parmanu. Does that sound familiar? It should. It's an absolutely incredible parallel to our modern atomic theory, which views elementary particles like quarks and leptons as the fundamental, indestructible building blocks of, everything. Okay, let's move on to our third category. So we've got our substance, and we know its qualities, but how do things actually do anything? How do they move, change, or interact with each other? That's where karma comes in. And no, not that kind of karma. In this context, it has a very specific, physical meaning. In the Vaisheshika system, karma simply means action or motion or dynamics. It's the engine of all change. And this is where the text just drops a bombshell. It states that objects will stay at rest or continue moving uniformly unless some external cause or force acts on them. I mean, come on, that is the core foundational idea behind Newton's first law of motion, written down thousands of years before Newton was even born. In fact, you can take this even further. We can actually map the pieces of Newton's most famous equation, F equals ma, directly onto these ancient ideas. Think about it. The force, the F, is the external karma, the action being applied. The mass, the m, is an inherent guṇa, a quality of the object. And the acceleration, the a, is the change in motion of the dravya, the substance itself. It's like they described an ancient formula for force, just using philosophical language instead of math. All right, on to our last pair of concepts. Now, these 2 get a little more abstract, a little more philosophical, but they tackle a really deep question. What is it that makes things of the same type similar? And at the same time, what makes each individual thing totally unique? First, there's Sāmānya, which is all about universality. It's the shared category or type that different things can belong to. So you can think of it as the property of electronness that every single electron shares, or the dogginess that all dogs have in common. In physics, this lines up perfectly with concepts like universal physical laws and symmetries. These are rules that apply in the exact same way to all particles of a certain type, no matter where they are in the universe. And the flip side of Sāmānya is viśeṣa, or particularity. So if Sāmānya is what makes all electrons the same kind of thing, viśeṣa is what makes this specific electron right here different from that specific electron way over there. It's the unique thisness, that individual identity that makes one thing distinct from everything else, even things of the exact same type. So if we translate this into the language of modern physics, Sāmānya represents the big picture stuff, the universal laws, the symmetries, the particle families like lepton. Viśeṣa then becomes the specific data for one individual particle, its unique position, its exact momentum, its particular quantum state. It's the difference between the universal blueprint for house and this specific house on this specific street. So, let's pull all these threads together. What does all this mean? Were these ancient philosophers somehow predicting quantum mechanics?
No, of course not. Let's be really clear. The point here isn't that ancient sages were secretly doing quantum field theory. The truly incredible takeaway is that the fundamental questions they were asking and the logical categories they came up with to find answers are so strikingly similar to our own. It shows this shared, timeless human drive to create a rational system to understand the world around us.
And here it is. This is basically our Rosetta Stone, the key that lets us translate between these two incredible systems of thought. You have dravya, the substance, which maps to particles and fields. You have guṇa, the quality, which maps to properties like mass and charge. Karma, the action, maps to forces and interactions. Sāmānya, the universal, maps to physical laws and symmetries. And viśeṣa, the particular, maps to a unique quantum state. It's a complete, coherent system.
You know, the source material we drew from puts it perfectly. It says that even though the Vaisheshika system didn't have the math and experiments of modern science, its conceptual structure foreshadows many scientific ideas. It's like they built the philosophical skeleton, the framework, that science would one day come along and flush out.
And not just leaves you with a really fascinating thought, doesn't it? If a logical framework for reality this clear was being laid out thousands of years ago, what other pieces of ancient wisdom might be out there, just holding up a mirror to our modern world, waiting for us to take a closer look? Thanks for joining us on The Explainer.